What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's my transfer tips for Game Week 26. I'm going to go through some of the popular players being moved in and out of people's squads, discuss whether they are good moves, and come up with possible alternatives as well. So let's get straight into it. So let's start with Cole Palmer. Only Amad Diallo has had more transfers out than him so far this week for midfielders. And it's not often I say this because I think a lot of the time the decisions we make in FPL are quite close calls. But I think selling Palmer in Game Week 26 is objectively a bad decision. Like, Aston Villa away is not that bad of a fixture. Then you got back-to-back home games against Southampton and Leicester. It just doesn't get better than that. And if you're one of those people that sold Palmer over the last 4 or 5 weeks, where he's only got 1 assist in 4 matches, fair enough, right? That's looking like a good decision. But if you still own him, you've got to forget about that and just look at the future. And the future looks bright. And yes, his output has come down from earlier on in the season, but that can change pretty quickly. And I don't even really understand why people would still be selling him. Like, who are they trying to get into their teams? Like, my team value is not all that great. I've still got Isak, Watkins, Salah, Palmer, Trent, Gabriel. There's not many other players that I feel like I'm missing that I massively need the cash for. Like, Haaland is definitely back on the menu soon, but I don't see a need to rush him in before Game Week 29, especially when Palmer's got Southampton and Leicester. So I don't really see any need to sell him. If you've got a good reason, by the way, put it in the comments below, because I might be missing something. I often am. But you've got to keep him. I can't see why you'd sell him this week. So a few people have started to bring in Danny Welbeck this week. Brighton have got Southampton away in Game Week 26, which is an enticing fixture. And the matches after that aren't that bad either. So in 27 and 28, it's back-to-back home games against Bournemouth and Fulham. Then it's Man City away in 29. So although it's not the greatest fixture on paper, Brighton definitely have a match in the blank game week. Then it's Villa at home in 30 and Palace away in 31. And he's sub 6 million at 5.5. So he looks like a pretty nice option if you're looking for a cheap forward this week. Certainly a better option than João Pedro. The only slight concern I had when I included Welbeck in the video was his minutes. Like, could at some point, even though João Pedro's been benched the last couple of games, could he play number 9 with Ruta behind him? But actually, I'm not sure it's worthwhile having too many concerns about Welbeck's minutes. Because when you look at the season so far, apart from when he was injured, he's pretty much always started. So when he got back in the team in Game Week 22 against Man United, he played 68 minutes. Since then, it's 90, 72, 83. And of course, we remember the start of the season when he was basically playing every single match. So I don't think I can sit here and tell you that Welbeck will definitely play every single game or start every single game, because Brighton do have a lot of attackers. But the information we have from the season so far is he is fairly first choice. I won't say nailed, but I do expect him to see in that first 11 most game weeks. So I think he's a pretty good option at 5.5. The only thing that's crossing my mind, and I can't believe I'm saying this, we wouldn't have said this like 5 weeks ago, is Beto just a better option for Everton? Like, you can get him for 4.9 million, so he's 0.6 million cheaper, and the fixtures for the next 4 game weeks are pretty good. Man United at home, Brentford away, Wolves away, West Ham at home. Obviously, you don't have a Southampton fixture like Brighton do, but the next 4 overall are pretty good. The only thing with Everton is the fixtures do turn quite bad when you get to Game Week 30. You've got Liverpool away, Arsenal at home, Forest away, and then City at home, then Chelsea away. So that's a pretty bad run between 30 and 34. So if you're someone that's looking to free hit in 29, I'd probably avoid Beto. But for 0.6 million less than Welbeck, you've obviously got money to spend elsewhere. But I think in isolation, Welbeck is not looking like that bad of a pick. So Cody Gakpo's had over 200,000 transfers out this week. He's already missed the game against Wolves in Game Week 25 and looks like a massive doubt for the Villa game as well. So I think a lot of people are going to want to sell him this week. Even if Arne Slot says that he's available for the Man City game, if he's missed the previous 2, there's every chance he'll just be on the bench. And after that City game, you've got Newcastle at home and Southampton at home, which looks pretty good. But with Jota back fit, getting a start against Wolves, Diaz there as well, the more attackers that Liverpool have fit, the less minutes they all get, apart from obviously Mo Salah. I think we can all agree that Gakpo probably is first choice left winger, but if Jota's fit and is going to start through the middle, Diaz is going to take a lot of minutes off of Gakpo, including starts as well. So I don't think this is the worst week to offload him. In terms of replacements, the top 2 for me are probably Cunha and Mateta. If you're not free hitting in 29, I lean more towards the Wolves man. Bournemouth away this week, then Fulham at home, Everton at home, Southampton away, and pretty good fixtures after the blank as well. If you are free hitting in 29 and you don't own Mateta, I can't see any reason to ignore him. Like, Fulham away this week is not the best fixture, but it's not terrible. Then you've got Villa at home, Ipswich at home before the blank. And then after the blank, in game week 30, it's Southampton away. Then it's Brighton at home in 31. And then you've got that guaranteed double in 32. And on paper, City away and Newcastle away is not a great double. But as an overall package, good fixtures before the blank, good fixtures straight afterwards, and the guaranteed extra fixture, Mateta's got to be the one you bring in if you're on free hit 29. If you've got a little bit less money to spend, and I appreciate Gakpo's more expensive than all of these players, but you might need money elsewhere for other moves, I still like Vissa for the next 4. Leicester away, Everton at home, Villa at home, Bournemouth away. The fixtures get a little bit tougher after that. I'm going to talk about Mbeumo later, but at his price point, he's still a good option. Chris Wood, the player that I shouldn't be allowed to give an opinion on anymore, I fully understand people that own him are not going to sell him anytime soon. And that makes a lot of sense given what he's done for people this season. But if you don't own him, Newcastle away, Arsenal at home, City at home, next 3 doesn't scream massive points. And I know that sounds stupid given how many goals he scored this season. But you even look at the underlying numbers, 0.35 non-penalty expected goals per 90. Only Cunha on this list has less than that. But obviously Wood is nailed non-penalty. So again, like I was saying on the stream the other day, I think Wood is a good striker. I think he's a good pick if you've already got him. He wouldn't be the one that I would be bringing in this week. I'd rather just target better fixtures. But I'm an idiot. So if you want to go for Chris Wood, you absolutely should. Beto I already spoke about earlier, 4.9 million. Good underlying numbers, good fixtures. At his price point, he's looking like extremely good value. So if it allows you to spend money elsewhere on a bigger move, I like the idea of just getting Beto in. But the fixtures do turn quite bad from game week 30 onwards. And then you've got Marmoush for Man City. Pretty decent numbers overall so far. Obviously, small sample size. Hat-trick last week. It's just the Liverpool at home game this week I don't really like. And also, I'd want to wait and see how long Grealish might be out for. I think at the moment he's orange flagged, I think it is. Let me just double check here. Let me find him right down the list. Yeah, 25% chance of playing orange flag. So it doesn't sound like he's going to be back necessarily for the next 1 or 2 games. But once he is, there is possible rotation there. So I quite like Marmoush. But let's wait and see what the diagnosis is on Haaland, because he did seem to have a bit of a knock when he came, at the end of the game against Newcastle. And if he's out, Marmoush suddenly becomes really good. But I think Haaland is the main forward you're going to want. And I'm not sure if there's much room for Haaland and Marmoush. I'm not against him. I think getting a 7.1 million attacker for Man City, whose starts look pretty good right now, is decent. But I think if you're buying this week, do you really want to buy before Liverpool at home? Probably not. And obviously with Cunha, although the numbers look a little bit worse, he's absolutely nailed for 90 minutes and probably on penalties as well. So Kerkez continues to be pretty popular, nearly 50,000 transfers in so far this week. I've spoken about him a lot over the last couple of game weeks, so I won't go into great detail here. Short summary, good fixture in 26, Wolves at home. Brentford at home in 29, not bad either. Then Ipswich at home in 30 is decent. The Bournemouth defence is very good as well. If you already own him, you're not selling him. I completely get that. If you're buying new, I would just be careful, because in 27 and 28, it's Brighton away and Spurs away. And so if you're spending 5 million, happy to play him in 26, maybe less so in 27 and 28. So just consider how often you might need to put him in the first 11. It's not the end of the world if you've got to play him in those games. But if you're buying fresh, you can look at the fixtures and maybe look elsewhere potentially. If you really want a Bournemouth defender, I also like Howson for 0.5 million less. At 4.5, I think that's pretty good value, especially if money is tight for the future moves that you want to make. Like, Kerkez is good, but he's not essential in that defence. If you want to go for Howson at 4.5, really good option as well. One other player I would consider at this kind of 5 million or less price point is Ain't Nuri for Wolves at 4.7 million. Now, this week, his fixture is definitely worse because he's away to Bournemouth rather than home to Wolves. But after that, I do prefer the fixture run that Wolves have got. Fulham at home in 27, Everton at home in 28, Southampton away in 29, West Ham at home in 30, and Ipswich away in 31. And I think under Pereira, they are starting to look a little bit better defensively. Obviously, beat Villa in game week 24, 2-0. I don't know if he's going to be as attacking under the new manager. We haven't really got a huge sample of games to go on so far, but the numbers are looking fairly encouraging. Not a huge amount of goal threat in most games, but a bit of assist threat there as well. And I think even if his attacking output came down a little bit, but the defensive, clean sheet potential went up a bit more, that's probably worth it, right, for 4.7 million. So it's not ideal this week that he's got Bournemouth away, but I think from 27 onwards, I would probably rather have Ain't Nuri, at least for 27, 28, and then maybe 29 as well, than someone like Kerkez, especially when he's more expensive too. So like Kerkez, Mbeumo continues to be pretty popular this week, just over 70,000 transfers in. Interestingly, he's only actually got 1 goal in the last 5 game weeks and no assists in that time. So the output has dropped quite a bit. And I don't think it's all that surprising because he has overperformed so far this season. Like his XG per 90 non-penalty is 0.21. His actual goals per 90 are 0.56. It was unlikely that he was going to keep up that level of output, but it doesn't make him a bad option, especially for the next 4 game weeks. And we know why, right? He plays 90 minutes every game, he's on penalties, and the fixtures are good. Leicester away this week, Everton at home in 27, Villa at home in 28, and Bournemouth away in 29. The fixtures do get a little bit trickier after that. It's Newcastle away in 30, Chelsea at home in 31, and Arsenal away in 32. So he is probably a shorter term option, but even if you were considering wildcarding in 30, keeping him for Bournemouth away in the blank and Newcastle away in game week 30, not that bad at all. So I would still encourage people to bring him in, but I would say he probably looks less essential than people were making out that he was a few weeks ago. That's all I would say. So if you're happy with your midfield, don't feel like you've got to force Mbeumo in. I would say for game week 29, when I look ahead to the blank, which people will be thinking about, he probably is in the best 5 midfielders. Like if you were hand-picking a free hit team with like playing a 3-5-2 in game week 29, you probably would include Mbeumo. You'd probably go 1 or 2 Bournemouth midfielders for sure. Maybe a Man United one, but probably not right now. Possibly Foden against Brighton. And then it probably is Mbeumo, I would say, just because of the 90-minute penalty factor. You don't have to go for him. You could go for Foden, 2 Bournemouth midfielders, Nwaneri or Trossard, plus like Bruno Fernandes. But I think Mbeumo's right up there. So if you're looking to bring him in, still a good option. But don't feel like he's essential because he's absolutely not. Leicester away in 26 is pretty enticing. So it's no clean sheet since game week 21 for Newcastle. Lewis Hall has already fallen from 5.1 to 5 million. He's had nearly 50,000 transfers out this week. We sometimes talk about the windows to buy or sell a player. I completely understand why people sold Lewis Hall last week before they played Man City away. But this week, if you're already an owner, I don't think there's a rush to sell him before Forest at home. Obviously, he's up against Chris the Unstoppable Wood, and I understand a clean sheet's going to be hard to come by. But on paper, it's not an awful fixture, and Lewis Hall is pretty attacking as well. So if you've got him in your team, I wouldn't feel like he's a must-sell. If you want to sell him before Liverpool away in 27, absolutely fine. And if you're not free hitting in 29, he probably is going to have to go sooner rather than later. But Forest at home in 26, West Ham away in 28 are not terrible fixtures. And if you are free hitting in 29, there's every reason to want to keep hold of him because 2 of the next 3 are not bad. You can free hit him out in 29. Then you've got Brentford at home in 30, Leicester away in 31, and a double in 32. So this is very much going to come down to how your team is looking this week, what your chip strategy is as well. For anyone that doesn't own Lewis Hall, I can't see any reason to buy him right now. Yes, this week's fixture is not bad, but then you're running straight into Liverpool away in a blank in 29. I think if you're a non-owner, especially if you're playing through 29 and wildcarding shortly afterwards, that's the time to pick him up. He still looks like the best Newcastle defender to own, but there's no rush to get him in if he's not in your squad. So Daniel Muñoz is in the top 5 defender transfers in so far this week, and at 4.8 million continues to look like really good value. And I've said this a few times over the last couple of weeks. I really regret selling him. I think it was a mistake. Yes, he blanked against Everton, which I was very thankful for. But before that, it was an 11-pointer against Man United, 4 against Brentford, 6 against West Ham, 6 against Leicester. Been super consistent, clean sheets, genuine attacking threat as well. He's just a really good FPL pick. If you've got him in your squad, you're definitely keeping hold of him. If you're not free hitting in 29, you could potentially sell him after the Ipswich game in 28 and before the blank, and then pick him back up again later. But if you can get through 29 with him on your bench, that's an even more ideal situation because the games in 30, 31 are decent, and you've got that double in 32. If you're looking to pick him up fresh because you're not already an owner of him, Fulham away in 26 is not an amazing fixture. I don't think there's a great chance of a clean sheet there, so I wouldn't panic about bringing him in. But a bit like Mateta, if you are free hitting in 29, I can't see any reason not to go for him. You're going to want him both before and after the blank, so why not just get him in as soon as you need a new defender? If you don't own him and you're not free hitting in 29, that's a much trickier situation to be in. That's basically the position I'm in. I think you have to let him go. Annoyingly, like Villa at home in 27, Ipswich at home in 28 look pretty good. But you're probably in a position right now Like, if you're in a position where you've got lots of players that are playing in 29, fair enough. But if you're like me, where you've got 5 or 6 players that aren't playing in 29, you've got to have one eye on that. So when you're bringing in a new defender, you need them to also play in 29. So I think, unfortunately, I'd probably have to... I say unfortunately, I think he's a pretty good pick, but I'd have to look at someone like Aït-Nouri instead of Muñoz, despite me having a good idea that Muñoz will probably do better over the next 3 game weeks. But I think with 29 in mind as well, you've probably got to let him go. So if you own him, you're keeping. If you're free hitting in 29, good player to bring in. If you're not free hitting, I'd be tempted just to ignore it and just hope for the best, because it could be bad with the next 3 games. So it's over 100,000 transfers in for Mitoma this week. And what a goal against Chelsea, by the way, in game week 25. That touch to bring the ball down was so good. And I like to think that over 100,000 people have brought him in just because of that. And it's not just because he's got Southampton away in game week 26. And actually, I think it's gone a little bit under the radar how well he's done recently. I've certainly not completely clocked it. Since game week 21, so the last 5 game weeks, he's had 3 double-digit hauls. So 10-pointer against Ipswich, 12 against Man United, and the 10-pointer against Chelsea in the week just gone. Blanked against Everton in game week 23 and only played 45 minutes in that game against Nottingham Forest. But unlike João Pedro, he was straight back in the team. So I think we know that Mitoma is first choice at this point. I would say this about him. He's a good pick for the same reasons I spoke about with Danny Welbeck. I think overall, the fixtures are pretty good over the next 6 game weeks. If he didn't have Southampton away this week, I'm not sure he would be so popular. And I think as a span of the next 4 matches, I'd probably still rather have a Bournemouth midfielder. So if you're offering me Cliver or Utara or Mitoma to bring in this week, I think Mitoma is definitely better for 26 specifically. But I think 26 to 29, I'd rather have the Bournemouth player. And I'd probably rather have Mbeumo as well. So it's going to depend on who you don't own. And that's not me saying you shouldn't bring Mitoma in, because he could do really well over the next 3, where the Man City game in 29 just doesn't matter. And he is a good pick. I just prefer one of those other players instead, and just hope for the best that he doesn't get another double-digit haul against Southampton. But if you want to bring him in, you absolutely should. The minutes look good, the starts look good, and the fixtures are pretty decent. If you've enjoyed that video, make sure to give it a like and hit that subscribe button. Rate 5 stars if you're listening on podcasts, and I'll be back tomorrow with a game week preview.